How is it going, Juju Gang? Happy Sunday. Good morning. Get yourself a cup of coffee or some Juju if it's not too early. It's a little bit too early for Juju here for me. I hope everyone's doing well. Let me know where you guys are tuning in from, city, state, country in the chat. Let me pull up the chat, and also let me know if my audio is coming in clear, okay, as well. We got a lot to talk about in this stream. I've compiled kind of the agenda, and I'll kind of give it to you guys here. We got Tesla V11 to talk about. Why is Farzad messaging me? So we got Tesla V11 to talk about. It's officially out. Some news about production and deliveries, which is coming up. Some macro news, as always. Banks are collapsing. It feels like left, right, and center. We got Ford to talk about and some videos to catch up on as well. So let's start with, and I'll pull up Webull here. 190.41 cent on Tesla heading into the fresh week ahead. It feels like every week there's like a major news story that's going around. Anoop from London, England. How's it going, Anoop? Good evening. Mimi, how's it going? DRK in the chat. Sticky fingers. Hello, everyone. How's it going? Kenton. Let's see here. Let me scroll down. 190 sitting on Tesla. Never tired of hearing this. Yeah, you know what? It feels like I've said this, a million times at this point, and I don't even know. Like, it's just at this point now where it's like 200 to me kind of just feels like an average kind of it's like, Tesla could go up 10% to 200 and I wouldn't, it just doesn't do anything really at this point for me. I guess my bar is kind of set above there, as it probably should be. I mean, the 200-day moving average is even sitting at $216, and the 300-day moving average currently is sitting at $243. So I guess take that with a grain of salt if you want. Alrighty. Awesome. StreamYard today. Yes, StreamYard indeed. Cindy, how's it going? Morning from the Oz. From down under. Hope you're doing well. The weather must be tailing off on your guys' end in terms of summer, right? Sachin from London, UK. Mark from Detroit. How's it going, Mark? And by the way, I can also pin up the StreamYard link here in a second if anyone wants to come on stream and talk about Tesla or Mac or anything like that. Greetings from Germany. How's it going, Cypress Hill? Abe, how's it going, my friends? Happy Sunday all. Happy Sunday to you too. Stinky thinks we'll hit 220 this week for sure. Okay, well, book it. Kenton, thank you. Appreciate that. I have an orange in hand. Shout out to Mark. Actually, oh no, that's the sun. For a second, that looks kind of like an orange. $150 to $300. Paul says it doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, up until 300 kind of is the top at, is like maybe 250 for me. But yeah, totally agree. Hi from Norway. How's it going? Bjarnjar. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Maybe said I'll be excited when we hit a new all-time high. I think we've got some time to go until then. It feels like macro is kind of leading the way, at least on that. Paco from saying hi to Juju family from Johannesburg, South Africa. How's it going, Paco? Ice Billy from Leicester, UK. You know, it's funny. This time zone is like, I wonder if it's too North American on the Pacific. Might be too early for a live stream, but on the East Coast in the middle of the day on a Sunday feels like kind of a good time for all our European friends. It feels like a good time as well. Just because it's in the evening going into the week. It's only the Pacific, which I feel like it's a little bit too early for. But if anyone's watching on the West Coast, let me know. And of course, this is on replay as well. So if you're watching on replay, let me know in the chat. Or let me know in the comments at that point. Richard from Lake District, UK. See what I mean about all of our European friends? Sean, how's it going, man? Juju Gang is here. Appreciate that. Leicester is pronounced Leicester. Okay, well, there we go. The more you learn. From South California, says Sean. Taiwan here. Wow, look at that. Chris from Oregon, Sweden. Dan from Sammamish, Washington. Hopefully I pronounced that okay. I think I'm a little bit more educated on this one than the average person that doesn't live in Washington State. Sammamish. Okay, never mind. I take that back. Okay, let's get into the news. Let's get into the news cycle. And before I do, I'm going to throw into the chat the StreamYard link. If anyone wants to come up at any point, call into the show. Happy to take callers. And we could talk Tesla, we could talk macro, we could talk banking crisis, we can talk thesis on Giga Berlin. And why don't we start with Giga Berlin on that note? Giga Berlin, Tesla tweeted out yesterday, Giga Berlin hits 5,000 builds per week 1 year after delivering the first vehicles to customers. So this is quite big news, and I retweeted this and I said Giga Berlin just went from 3,000 Model Ys per week in mid-December to 5,000 in about 3 months. That's a 66% growth in a single quarter. Now, of course, it's a little bit less impressive if you go from like someone commented, I think it was Dan, saying GM went from 3 Hummers a month to five. It's a little bit different, but at these levels of scale, like we're talking 200,000 plus cars coming out of Giga Berlin, or Model Ys at least. And actually, I'll pull it up here. Holmar's catalog did the calculation for us. So 260,000 Model Ys a year coming out from there, right? So it's at a point now where Giga Berlin is actually pretty much ramped up to the point where it's going to give decent enough margins, I hope. It's going to make a meaningful contribution, pardon me, to the bottom line for production deliveries. And it really just feels like finally Giga Berlin is turning the corner. Austin, different story. Of course, we can get into Austin later, but just Giga Berlin, all the red tape that we had to go through and all the bureaucracy there, it feels like this is a really good win here that we're seeing. How's it going, everyone? Seems like there's a little bit of a lag on the chat, but I'll throw everyone up there. Sanjay, how's it going? Daryl, Michael, DJ, Tesla Cylon, Marco, our awesome mod as well. Indiana, Germany. There we go. Okay, we got the crew back in town. Okay, let's continue on a conversation. Now, I'm gonna pose a question. Where is Giga Berlin run rate gonna be by the end of this year? So we have about what? We're 3 months in, so about 8 or 9 months left until end of 2023. Throw in the chat where your guess is for run rate for Model Ys, let's say specifically, or because I think that's predominantly what's all being made, right? So right now, as it stands, 52 weeks a year, 260 is the run rate, give or take. Let's say 250, give some downtime. 250,000 cars a year is their run rate. What's their yearly run rate in Giga Berlin going to be by the end of this year? What's your guess? Okay, some people are throwing in, I'm guessing this is weekly run rate. Fair enough. 10,000, so doubling 10,000, 10,000. Okay, so you guys are throwing in the weekly number. That's fine. So you guys think they'll be able to double their weekly run rate by the end of the year? Interesting. It's quite a lot by the end. So I'm just trying to run the math of how many more lines they have to do, and specifically how many more battery cells do they have to produce for this to be feasible. Because what's going to be interesting as well is to see this quarter is how do margins get affected with Berlin coming online. I'm seeing some debate out there talking about, well, Berlin's online, it's ramping up. This means that margins are going to shrink as they start to capitalize more equipment, and they run into inefficiencies. But it feels like Tesla's really just smoothing out their ramping curve here. So their batteries are getting imported, yes, but for them to really hit scale, they're going to have to build their where's their 4680 plant or line in production? Because they were starting to build that some while ago. Yeah. So what do you think? Well, you know what? Wasn't this kind of sort of the goal by the end of the year out of Berlin anyways? I'd be happy with a 6,000 to 8,000 per week run rate by the end of the year, weekly, that is. Just because I think what's more important almost is kind of the margins that come out of here. Long term, we know that batteries have to be made at Berlin for this really to hit scale, but that's really the question for me, is kind of the margin aspect of this. But you know what? The bigger news is that Tesla's going ahead with full-on production. They don't care. Everyone's talking about demand concerns happening. Europe is easing up. China is strong, by the way. We saw the Chinese numbers come out last week. So it does seem like Europe is coming together for Tesla, and they're going full force. They might have to reduce prices eventually, depending on if they have too much supply. But that's going to be something that I'm not too worried about as it stands. So why don't we take our first caller? I just see a Noop popping in here. Let me just reset everything on my end. Hold on one second here. And we'll take up a Noop if you're ready here.
Hello.
How's it going, Noop?
Hey, okay, not bad. Yourself?
Oh, good. Thank you for joining us.
No worries, no worries. Cool. So yeah, I've got 4 kind of quickish questions. So I'll lay them out then, and you can go through them. So the first is around semi trucks. It'd be good to understand if you've heard much about obviously we've had PepsiCo, and has you've heard about much. I've seen gone a little bit quiet there. I know that one, especially from some of the commentary I've heard, it's very much a corporate thing. So I can imagine that as they start, I'm sure it's quite difficult, but as they start ramping that's just going to be hopefully a bit of a slam dunk for businesses to want to switch across. Second is around Cybertruck, and obviously, hopefully, touch wood, we start getting some production deliveries this year. Do you think that it's going to be a bit of a job for them, to kind of as it's people start seeing it, especially in the North American market, that they're
Yeah.
almost going to have to manage expectations? Obviously, customers are going to, especially those in line, are going to want it so quickly that yeah, they're going to have to. That's going to be a bit of a challenge for them. Third would be around the kind of charging networks. I'm in the UK, and I think one of the things that people find a bit difficult sometimes when talking about EVs is that very good networks, and say around London, the capital, but kind of as you go further past the country, there's not much there. I think that kind of makes people a bit nervous. And then the last bit's around just I think especially in the UK, one of the challenges is that I think excise duty from petrol brings in about 16 billion pounds a year. So one of the challenges I'm thinking for EVs is that as that starts increasing, the government loses that revenue. Saying that how are they going to penalise electric vehicle? I don't know if that's
Mm.
some maybe a UK specific thing, but I don't know if that's something that you've seen as a potential EV potential problem. So yeah, those are the four things. You have to go through all of them, but yeah, that's kind of
Okay.
my final
Well,
thoughts.
stay up here if you can, so we can have a
Yep.
discussion. I think so for the Tesla Semi. I do think it was kind of disappointing because they didn't really give too much
Yeah.
details out to the public in terms of like this is the tow load.
Mm.
This is the exact pricing. We didn't hear much about it. I think part of the thing with Semi is that it's a give and take really very much with their battery supplies right now. It's like
Yeah.
they can make these semis, but then they're gonna have to give up these batteries for other
Yes.
vehicles, right? So
Opportunity cost. Yeah.
it is, and I think they done good with at least publicly announcing that they've
Yes.
delivered, you
Hmm.
know? So I'm not holding my breath on more updates, although I did see on my YouTube a recommended video about Tesla Semi, so maybe there's some update that I've
Okay.
missed there on that end. There was an article that came out, though, a week after the Tesla Semi event that went through the
Yeah.
math of what they think the actual tow load can be
Okay.
on the Tesla Semi, and they ran some
Yeah.
math of give and take scenarios.
Hmm.
So I guess we'll see there. But I
Yeah.
agree, the Cybertruck is going to be big. Not just because of earnings, because I don't even expect it to be
Yeah.
really, margin enhancing to begin with, of course, but just the general sentiment of I think Tesla,
Yeah.
of the Tesla community, the person that buys a Cybertruck or really is going to be
It's
interested
gonna
in the
be yeah.
Cybertruck probably doesn't really care about Tesla right
No.
now. Like a lot of people that I'm talking about
Yeah.
with the Cybertruck, like those types of people really don't care about EVs. They
Mm.
don't care about the mission. They don't care about climate change. Like
Yeah.
these people just care about looking cool, driving a big
Yeah.
car, and being
That's
able
a
to
good
do whatever
thing,
the
right?
heck they
I
want.
mean, I
It's a
see that as
great
a real
thing.
positive. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it increases the demographic of the person,
Every
right?
hip hop video is gonna want to have it.
Yeah, exactly. And when you talk about EV charging, like that's big because now Tesla is allowing
Mm.
non-Teslas to charge at these EV networks. I mean,
Yeah.
Tesla's it's like I model Tesla, let's say back of the napkin on the amount of vehicles that they're going to sell, and then I
Mm.
just do a discounted cash flow, let's say. But it's like I don't even include the value of the supercharging network that Tesla has. It's kind of like having a monopoly on all the good
Yeah.
gas stations in the world. So as an owner, I don't love the fact that Tesla's opening it up
Yeah.
to kind of non-Teslas, to be quite honest, because
Mm.
it's already so packed. But Tesla's committed to at least opening a bunch of these superchargers up where they don't think it's going to be a problem
It's a
anymore.
good regulatory thing, right? I just think that it's very smart thing again as they get kind of so big that obviously governments are going to increase their focus. It's a kind of gift and a curse. A gift in terms of employment and countries wanting to have them there, but then a bit of a curse that they're going to think they don't like it when corporations get really large. So I
Yeah,
just think yeah, that
unlikely.
real estate and that power.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Then the last point around I don't know if that's more of a UK thing, but yeah, some of that potential concern are they going to penalize EV drivers because they're going to lose a lot of kind of.
Actually, like I think we're seeing that. I forget what state it was. Maybe it was
Mhm.
Michigan. Someone in the comments can correct me if I'm wrong. It was some state. It was some Midwest state. Maybe it was
Yeah.
like Kentucky or something. And there they were charging like an EV tax at the dealership level. So if you bought an EV or if you
Hmm.
bought a Tesla, you would have to pay. Oh, or maybe it was at the insurance level. On your
Okay.
insurance, you paid a premium for driving an EV because
Mm.
it didn't give the state all of the gas tax that it
Yeah,
would
they'll label
usually
it
get.
something else. They'll lie to you. They'll say, "Oh, it's this style, or always good for the environment." Because in the UK, not sure if you're
Yeah.
aware, there's a thing called ULEZ coming into place, so ultra low emission
Okay.
zones, where you have to pay if you have a vehicle. I think it's a diesel or petrol beyond a certain age. You have to pay £12.50 just to take you out of your driveway. So they're
Mm.
definitely monetizing. So I think, wow, if they're doing that for petrols and diesel as they get electric vehicles, I think the UK, I think we're going to introduce, if I had to guess right now, probably a charge per mile because
Mm.
they're not going to let that money go. No chance.
Absolutely. No, I mean that's the thing, it's kind of the give and take with everything is like,
Mm,
they want it done the old way, but it's an entirely new
yeah.
way of driving a car. Like, we know what I can actually see is like and this sounds very Orwellian, but like some
Mm.
sort of way, let's say in 20 or 30 years when the government can tap into every electric car 5G based or
Oh yeah,
whatever with and then they can just tax you based on
tracker.
the
Yeah, yeah. I'm surprised
just
they
the
don't do it
amount of
already. Yeah,
kilometers.
they'll just track it and then just won't let you to. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I can imagine that I'm surprised they don't do that already. To be honest.
Yeah, I just don't think they have the tech for it. Still, the
Yeah,
government's so antiquated. But it's one of the things with EVs that I do worry about is the ability for government authoritarians to tap into these cars because they're just computers at the end of the day, right?
yeah,
And tap into them and to be able to do whatever. Let's say if there's a lockdown, to be able to lock all of these cars remotely so you can't drive, right? So these are
yeah.
the things that definitely come up. But it's the same thing. It's like saying we don't want to have computer technology ever come up in our world because then the
Mm,
government could tap into it. Well, it's like we're still
yeah.
better off with computers,
Yeah, of
but
course. Yeah,
yes,
but it's
but
net positive. Absolutely. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Cool. That's
awesome.
great.
Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate
No
it.
worries. Thanks for that.
Cheers. Awesome. Give it up to Anoop for coming on to the stream. If anyone wants to come on, I'll throw in the link again in there. We don't have anyone waiting just yet, so you can come in first of the line. 190.41 sitting on Tesla, and that brings us to our next conversation. Wisconsin, you have to pay for extra annual registration. Did I say that right? Wisconsin. Wisconsin. I'm trying to throw out my like Eastern accent. Horrendous. Okay, so this from Sawyer, tweet from Sawyer Merritt. Breaking: massive new wave of eligible Tesla owners in the U.S. and Canada are being sent FSD Beta V11.3.3 as we speak. Go check your cars and apps. Anyone in the chat get version 11 V11 FSD? Anyone in the chat? And if you have, and you've tried it, would love for you to come onto the stream and give us your thoughts. Worst case, go give us a comment or something. I can read it out because this is big now officially. And here, I'll read it out for anyone that cares enough or hasn't read it already. Enabled FSD Beta on highway. This unifies the vision and planning stack on and off the highway and replaces the legacy highway stack, which is over 4 years old. The legacy highway stack still relies on several single camera and single frame networks and was set up to handle simple lane specific maneuvers. FSD Beta's multi-camera video networks and next-gen planner that allows for more complex agent interactions with less reliance on lanes make way for adding more intelligent behaviors, smoother control, and better decision making. That's one of those paragraphs that I'm going to copy paste throw into ChatGPT and say explain this to me like I'm 5. But anyways, the bottom line is there used to be a different stack for highway. There used to be a different stack for city driving. This is unifying them, which is making the transition between them better and also allowing Tesla team to be able to have more changes and be able to fix a lot of the problems that come up a lot faster than having to deal with two different stacks. Seems like Paul says V11 is good. Paul, feel free to come on if you want to give us your thoughts on V11. Let's see here. Toll roads are being thrown about in Pacific Northwest. Oh yeah, it's very much a thing here. So, but you know what? This V11 news, I'm starting to think, does any of this apply to revenue recognition? Is my question that I'm having. Maybe someone in the chat knows this better than I, but I'm starting to think that this might have revenue recognition implications on. Yeah, Paul, come on. No one else is here. It seems like revenue recognition can actually matter here because this is officially going out to real customers that have essentially subscribed to beta and it's a brand new stack and it's a significant change. So I do wonder if there's revenue recognition possibilities here that we may see surprise on Q1 report. Remember, Q1 is really going to be, I think, one of the better reports to really analyze because it will not be as strong as what we're expecting for the other ones. And Cindy, no, I haven't seen Zach and Jesse's V11 review. I've kind of been MIA and busy here. All right, Paul's on. Paul has V11, I believe, but let me bring him on. Hi, Paul. How's it going?
Hey, Ashley. Good, thanks.
Is it correct? Do you have V11?
I do. Yeah, I got it 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
So
nice.
kind of in the first rollout. I was in. I'm from Toronto, but I'm in Regina right now for work.
Oh,
My
okay,
folks are
nice.
in Manitoba, so I got it actually when I was in Manitoba. So I got to try that full stack driving on the way back, and it was fine. I would say no big like leap or anything like that. It's much better on big vehicles. It'll take the side of the lane that gives you a little more room and things like that, which is a nice change. Around the city, it's fine. I don't know. I'd be more curious to try it in Toronto, where I've had more experience with the old beta. But
Mm.
yeah, it's super good. Like it's pretty impressive stuff.
Are you did you drive it from Toronto to Regina on beta exclusively?
Well, from Toronto to Regina was about a month and a half ago, so that was on AP. And
Okay.
again, I've done that drive now 3 times since I got my car last year, and it's upwards of 95% of the drive is all
Yeah.
AP. Um,
Yeah.
so full stack on the way home next month will be interesting to see, but
Mm.
I don't know if it's really going to improve that much over my experience with AP.
Or
Hopefully, some of the phantom braking drops off a bit, but
Are you still seeing some of that phantom braking happening?
yeah, and there's just one spot between Regina and my folks' home in Manitoba, and on the way there last summer and this summer, literally to the spot, it pretty
Yeah.
aggressively phantom brakes twice. But
Mm.
say on the Toronto to Regina trip, which is what 3,000 kilometers plus, 4 or 5 times maybe, and even at that, it was pretty minor stuff. So I think that's a pretty big improvement over last summer
Hmm.
overall.
Yeah, the only time I did a really long road trip on autopilot was 2020 or 2021. So it's been a while, and I had a couple of I drove from Vancouver to Lake Louise, so it was about 12-ish hours, and there was only a couple spots with phantom braking, but that was only on autopilot. So I thought it was maybe an only an autopilot thing, and it was one of those like you're kind of going through an underpass, over a bridge type of scenario. So it wasn't massive, but it was there. But other than that, I agree. Autopilot is very underrated. It just
Oh, it's
like
amazing.
people don't even need like I had a buddy message me last week that he's buying a Tesla and he's like, "Do I buy a FSD?" And I was like, "You don't need to. Like, you're not going to be driving a lot on highways. You're mostly driving in the city. If you care about the tech, you can always buy it after." And he's getting the rebate, so it keeps him under that qualification number to actually get that rebate from the province. And so I was like, no, you don't need to. Autopilot is really good on its own. And if you ever need, beta or FSD and you get interested, you can buy it after or subscribe to it once it's up here. So,
Yeah, to
um,
be honest, if I were to do it all over again, I wouldn't get it. It's cool to see. I placed my order on Tom Brady Day, so I was feeling a little bit extra generous to
yeah,
Tesla. But that being said, like around the city, if I want to just get somewhere as relaxed as possible, I'm still driving most of the time. If
mm,
I want to go and like see what the tech's doing, then I'll
mm,
turn FSD on and have fun with it. But it's still more of a like a stress inducing experience at this point in time, even though that the bulk of the interventions are like the car's probably handling it or it's
yeah,
too cautious.
yeah.
That's sort of the main thing. So yeah, it's
If
been
you're
good.
like I feel like if you're cruising and you don't care about passing people, perfect, right?
Yeah,
I feel like I'm a little bit nuts in the sense where I always want to be able to pass someone and get around them. And if there's, if it's switching up to a point where like there's a passing lane opening up, I'm taking the passing lane and going in front of these people. But I feel like on that's why I don't have, I haven't tried FSD enough. I don't know if it would do that really to my liking. But autopilot, like if you really are one of those drivers where you just don't care, you'll go the speed limit and you just want to just pretty much cruise and not do anything, perfect, right?
when I'm manually driving, I'm much more impatient. When I have the tech on, I am much more inclined to just like, oh, I'll get there a minute later,
Huh.
whatever, and kind of just turn the brain off a little bit and enjoy the podcast or whatever you're doing.
Mm.
So um, yeah, from an insurance perspective, that's kind of an interesting
Yeah,
observation I've made. Right, like my habits are definitely safer with AI.
right on. Yeah. Awesome. Appreciate you coming on, Paul. That was awesome.
Yeah,
Great insight. Take care.
good
Drive
day.
safe home.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Shout out to Paul coming on, giving us his thoughts on V11. It's always nice to hear from a Canadian talking about FSD beta. No offense to my American friends out there, but it's just, it feels a little bit more closer to home. But let's bring on our next guest. If you are ready for it, Tony, you might have to unmute yourself here. Familiar face to the channel, friend of the show. Tony, how's it
Hey
going?
Ash, what's up?
Good, man. How are you?
Yeah, doing good. I just wanted to add something to what Paul was saying is that I've noticed that since I've been using FSD Beta and autopilot just in my Tesla, like my driving habits are changed completely.
Huh.
Like even if I go slower or it takes me longer to get there, I don't care. Like I'm willing to leave like 15 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour even earlier. And then, for a really long drive, got to account for like supercharging too, right? So I just kind of bake that in and just accept like I'm fine going 65, 60 miles an hour, like just in the slow lane behind semis because I'm not actually driving. So there's no more rush. My ego is completely divorced. Like anytime people are driving like assholes or like cutting me off or
Yeah.
whatever, like I really don't care anymore.
Huh.
So that's I'm curious if anyone else has had that experience or if you've had that experience too.
Interesting. Well, first I have to say I just Googled 65 miles is 105 kilometers per hour. That is
Yeah.
close to the speed limit on the top range on most of these highways that I'm driving on already. So for you to say that you're just cruising at these levels, like I'm already jealous.
Yeah.
But you know what? You're like, I can see that. The problem is that I don't drive on highways very often. So when I do, it's like I want to get out of the highway as fast as possible. I don't want to be just staying on there. And I feel like in a lot of American cities, you have to just daily drive on highways or freeways or whatever you guys call it, right? Like it's just the way of driving in. Like for example, Phoenix. Like to get anywhere, I had to go through a bunch of freeways to get there. So it's just like here, I mostly city drive. So when I have to highway drive, I don't want to be on the highway for very long. So I try to like speed through it. But that's mostly
Well,
a user issue.
I've had to do a lot of road trips related to work where I've had like 3 hour, one-way drives. In fact, a lot of my driving, because I tend to not drive my Model Y just around the city. My wife tends to drive it as a daily driver, and I use it like when I have a work trip or something. So most of my experiences driving it have been that 3 hour, 4 hour one way going to, like another city for some work stuff. So that probably feeds into it as well. There's more of like a mindset of like, I'm hunkering down for a long drive anyway. What's another 20 minutes in the car, especially when there's already 20 minutes baked in for supercharging. So,
fair enough.
But
That's a good point. Yeah.
The thing I was going to mention to you, or I guess it's kind of building on what I talked about last time we were here. And I feel like I might have figured out what an on-ramp could be for like the commerce portal in your Tesla or in your Tesla app. And it's going to be level 2 chargers. Because we think about people who have like live in apartments, live in condos. Where are those people going to charge other than using a supercharger as a gas station? It would probably be a public level 2 charger. We know that Tesla has the cheapest level 2 chargers, and it's like 40-50% cheaper than the competition's level 2 chargers. And they've already enabled the software side where you can pay through the Tesla app, right? So if you're a commercial property owner, like a mall or something, and you put in 50 level 2 Tesla chargers for people to charge, to sort of trickle charge. Well, I mean, like some of those, if they're on an 80 amp circuit, they can recharge your car at like 50 miles an hour. So that's, if you hang out at a store for like 3 hours, that's pretty much a week's worth of driving. I mean, 150 miles, 200 miles is what most people drive in a week. So it kind of makes sense. And it also lines up with the goals that the businesses that would have there, like a coffee shop, or a bar or
hotel,
whatever store, they want people to hang out there because they no longer have that edge of just selling you stuff. They have to provide some kind of experience, something to get you to actually come, because that's the one thing that online sales can't erode. So if you're the property owner and you put in all these chargers, you already have the sales portal. It's just one step up to tell all of your clients, or not clients, what would be tenants, like, hey, like sell your stuff through the Tesla sales portal, and here's how we could slice and dice things up so that there's like deals. So when people pull it up on their app, they can see it's 30 cents a kilowatt hour, or if you buy a movie ticket, you get 2 hours of free charging, or if you buy like a hamburger, you get this much time of free charging. You go to a restaurant here, you could pay the bill in the restaurant through the Tesla app, and the Tesla app knows the whole time you're in the restaurant. Once you close out your tab to pay the tip or whatever, then it reminds you, oh, you've got 10 minutes to unplug because you've like paid the tip. You're like ready to go. And if we imagine project out the future where like 20% of all new cars or 30% of all new cars are Teslas. At some point, 30% of all motorists will have the Tesla app. At what point does that create its own network effect inertia to where like all stores, whether they have this Tesla charger or not, want to be in this Tesla app marketplace trying to sell you something just because so many people have this app? And then there'll be like parallel opportunities for them paying for advertising, for ads to show up in appropriate places, whatever that's deemed to be, when people look for charging or look for food, like in their Tesla navigation or in their Tesla app.
Yeah.
And then you project that out even further into crossing over with something like Twitter, where Twitter wants to become a payment company. If Twitter achieves some kind of competitive advantage over other payment companies, that would naturally kind of feed together there. So I'm just curious what you think about that, if that's something you've thought about in the past.
That's a really smart idea. I hadn't actually given the level 2 very much thought. That's a great idea. And Gentry says it's kind of like the new Wi-Fi. And I first of all, I have to say level 2 can be superior despite being slower. People like to think faster is better, but sometimes when you're going to a level 3 supercharger, it's going to take 25 minutes. So you have to kind of stay there. If you're getting into a level 2 and you're just out for, you're out for an outing on a Sunday, let's say, it's great. You can park, you have 2.5 hours to kill at the park, at the beach, go eat at a restaurant. And then you have an outing and you come back and it's like you kind of didn't wait at all. Whereas the level 3 sometimes is kind of like, well, great, I have 30 minutes to kill. I can't really leave this joint because if I do, I'm not going to have enough time to come back. And usually those are pay parking stalls anyways in a lot of these superchargers, at least here in downtown. So it's first of all, I agree. Level 2 is where it's headed at. There are already level 2 Tesla network chargers out there, like hotels. For example, I stayed at Harrison Hot Springs a couple hours out from here. And at our hotel, we had Tesla supercharger or Tesla level 2 chargers. And they just plugged in. There was no charge. It was free for hotel members or hotel stayers. And, it was fine. But I agree, the opening up of an idea like what you said, if you buy a hamburger, you get an hour free of level 2. That's stuff like that is such a good idea because it already exists today. Like that sort of like, there's a coffee app here locally that if you buy credits through the coffee app and then you go to the local cafes that are enrolled into the program, you get like 40% off of your coffee because you bought it through the app instead of buying it in person. So this kind of like ecosystem does exist. And if anyone is going to, Tesla has a monopoly on this. So anyone's going to want to join this network. So at the end of the day, it's not only just 20 or 30% of Tesla owners, it's going to be the 50% of EV owners that have crap systems to charge with because Electrify America sucks, So I totally agree. The Twitter thing is interesting.
If, when FSD or Robotaxi comes out, it could become pretty much everyone. It's kind of like Tesla eating Uber and then Tesla's Uber eating DoorDash and and Grubhub, like because it's all and then that gets you a step closer to like the Twitter everything app vision.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. There's a lot of maybe incest isn't the best word for this, but hopefully it paints my point. It paints my point across. But there's a lot of like complementary things between Twitter and Tesla. I just don't know about the appetite from investors. And let me know in the comments if you guys agree, disagree. But I feel like anytime Twitter is mentioned with Tesla specifically about ideas, there's a lot of like, don't go there. And maybe that's just because it's too soon. Still, we've all been scarred.
I think it's partly because in most people's mind, they can't see beyond the horizon of Twitter being what it always has been, which is like social media, trolls, people going like in-depth policy stuff, when the reality is that Twitter is headed towards what PayPal should have been. And I think most people don't because that's the stated mission, or that seems to be the underscoring reason why Musk got into it. It's unfinished business from PayPal. And that's something that people can't quite fathom or imagine. And that kind of limits people to when they think about what Twitter is or how big Twitter can get or how relevant it can be.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of good stuff here. It's going to be a long-term process, a long-term thing, but but that's what happens when you connect essentially you essentially have a computer on wheels. It kind of opens
Oh
up
yeah.
anything and everything. And that's what people don't get about ICE versus EV, is that this opens up the not only just the electrification, but the interconnectivity between vehicles, between platforms, between merchants. There's a lot here that's good, and it's going to be margin enhancing because software really doesn't cost a lot to do, right? So,
Yeah.
right on. Appreciate that, Tony. Always bringing on good thoughts. Always bringing on good discussion points. Appreciate it. Take care, man.
Thanks. Peace.
Shout out to Tony. We'll get to Steven here next. Thanks for waiting, Steven. How's it going, my friend?
Hey, Ashu. Long-time listener, first-time caller. How's it going?
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yes, it's going good. I'm hoping everyone is liking the Sunday morning. It's a little bit early. The feedback I'm getting is a little bit early, but it's better than nothing.
I'm on the U.S. West Coast. It works, you know.
Okay, perfect.
Made the French press coffee, and I'm down.
Go. Right on.
So wanted to not much. I'm not much of a trader, just like buy and hold guy. So not really interesting that way. But there's a couple angles on the business model that I haven't heard folks talking about that I thought might be of interest to the audience. I would, first of all, Tony's points about the integration. I mean, the amount of competitive intel that Tesla's going to get from bringing in, the competition, and just observing how people use the superchargers and that sort of pattern. This guy is, it's not valueless. It'd be I don't know what ends they could put it to, but it's not like they don't have a machine learning team sitting there ready to grind through looking for useful patterns.
Yeah.
But so that's like two business model angles that I haven't heard mentioned before. One, you hear a lot, for instance, like with the unibodies, the cast frames, and the Cybertruck, is about the accidents and repairability. And it's interesting when you hear the castings. They talk about failed castings, or I keep hearing mentioned that they can just take the failed castings and toss it in basically the hopper and melt it down again.
Right.
So they're out the energy of the wear and tear on the press and the energy involved, but the raw materials are still there.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about a large majority of the car's frame being made with a couple of castings, and the castings are homogeneous. They're just and for everything I've heard is that the casting is just a single piece of exotic metal that Tesla invented. So if I get in a crash with, say, a sub $25,000 car, is Tesla going to be able just to take that off my hands? Because I, of course, have Tesla insurance. They just take that thing off my hands, melt it down, and make a new freaking car and recover a significant amount of value from that totaled car. They can recover, who knows it, because they can recycle the battery pack. We know that. They can just run it through Redwood, and Redwood is doing more than 95% at this point. And the end result is is material that's more pure than what they get from refineries. So they recover almost all of that money. They recover, they pull out a couple of these frame pieces, they melt those down, and aside from the glass and maybe the seats are damaged, the steering wheel's a loss and stuff, but the major structural elements, they can just pull that. You don't have to you don't have to send it to the wrecking yard and crush it into a cube and have it sit somewhere in Arizona, baking in the sun forever, right?
Interesting thought. I didn't think about that. I guess
I haven't heard this mentioned anywhere.
So I am just going through this logistically. Let's say you live in Edmonton, Canada, and you get into a fender bender that totals your car for whatever reason, because we know insurance companies are like that. Now, how do you get that car to a gigafactory where this would have to be possible then, right? Like there would be cost associated with that. Of course, this
can it drive itself?
Not anymore. Let's say it's total.
Yeah. All right.
And of course, some of this is trivial on my end, but I'm just going through it mentally. But you're right in the sense where if you can get local parts dealers, manufacturers to be able to go through the same processes of recycling, at least maybe you can get credits, and you can have some sort of credit system through that.
Yeah, or you could just grind it locally, melt it down into ingots, and ship the ingots because they'd be much more dense volumetrically. So you just slap it on a Tesla semi and have it motor on down to the nearest gigafactory. There'll be one in Canada at some point, right? So,
I hope I'm not going to hold my breath anymore on that.
sorry about that, just as a sidebar,
Mhm.
I don't have a good answer for this, but I haven't heard an explanation yet about why all of the manufacturing lines, watch Investor Day, took the day off from work, all of, they're removing paint shops. The line is, this beautiful parallel operation, very efficient, 30% smaller, supposedly, again, over the efficiencies they've already, realized in Shanghai. And yet each factory is now bigger.
Hmm.
Why does every factory have a more square foot? And
Yeah.
my guess is that we're seeing Tesla prepare for something that I don't think they've dealt with yet, which is how to deal with essentially backwards compatibility to a large installed base, because they're used to iterating and changing everything and basically having a free hand. And now they have to deal with sort of the legacy production line and keeping that up, and having an entirely new line built alongside of it. Because when I've heard other reports about, like, they have a production line and they'll have an improvement, and they'll make like a parallel line, an offshoot, and they'll do it in parallel, and they'll prove a new manufacturing process works, and then they'll feed it back in, and then gradually they shift production. It's that continuous integration, continuous delivery
Yeah.
on massive scale, right?
Hmm.
So, but with this new line, I don't know, with a parallel, essentially lines operating in parallel and then merging at the end into a finished unit. I don't know if they can do that. But anyway, it's just weird. Like I said, I don't have an answer.
I actually agree with Sanjay. I think there's a little bit of future proofing here.
Yeah.
But also that I think Tesla's just in a position where they can just buy a lot more land now,
That's true.
than they could have, like, even 5 years ago with their balance sheet. So I think it's a matter of, hey, if we're gonna buy, we have all this extra money that we can't even use. We might as well invest into the actual part that's hard to acquire, which is the more land, and then we can decide to do nothing maybe with it later. But at least we own the land, right? And no one can tell
Rave
us
cave.
anything. Sorry.
Rave cave.
Oh,
It'll just be, yeah.
Giga Berlin enters the chat. But yeah, I actually, before you get to your next point, I just wanted to make Richard says, from Not Legal Advice, issue might have on the idea of recycling and then melting it down. You might have to disclose matter which was previously in an accident.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know if you recycle, does that,
If you
let
melt
go
it
of your,
down, it's
yeah,
like
does that let go
totally,
of your legal
I don't know.
liability there? These are
It's a good point,
questions that,
though.
yeah, but something to take into consideration. But yeah, go ahead with your next point.
And this is the last one, and this one is even a bit wilder, but a limitation on the sort of, you see all these competitive graphs and percentage of the market is BEV and versus ICE, but implicit in that comparison is this weird attitude about how a battery electric vehicle is treated as just another model of an ICE car. Effectively, they're like, oh well, these are interchangeable car models, and that is not at all true. In a small scale, if I go down to Auto Row and I choose, between Ford or GM, a couple $1,000s goes to either Ford or GM off that purchase, but almost every other dollar I spend on that car stays in the ICE ecosystem, right? I'm getting my warranty repairs. Ford and GM probably use the same tier 1 suppliers or tier 2. So, I mean, the money basically stays on that side of the fence. But I go BEV, and especially if I get Tesla, and my money leaves. I'm not buying gas. I'm still buying like tires, but almost every other dollar I'm spending on that car from the future it deflates, right? It deflates the existing ICE market. And the biggest representation of that is, or the example of that would be, and this really unresolved question is, at what point of BEV adoption does it become uneconomical to support the current gasoline distribution system? Because right now everyone has their margins, and auto sales of auto fleet only increases, but industries are really, really bad at getting smaller. They know how to get bigger. smaller is not something they do gracefully. And what's going to happen to these distribution, these refineries, these massive refineries that are only profitable at these huge scales, the shipping costs of oil, I mean, all the way down the production line, right? Like when 30% of the fleet sold is BEV, and that money has left the ICE ecosystem, can the ICE ecosystem operate in a familiar way? Like, you know, aside from like auto dealerships having to close because they don't do warranty repairs, right? Because, you know, BEVs last so longer. But I mean, just the freaking gasoline, like is, you know, you were talking about road trips. Like you have all these gas stations that are in the middle of nowhere. What's their margin on that fuel? How much can they absorb before that doesn't pencil out? And suddenly you're seeing like gas deserts, the same way people talk about, you know, charging deserts. Like,
Yeah.
I
Well,
haven't heard anyone talk about that.
Gas stations economics are pretty simple. They make almost nothing on the actual
Right.
sale of gas, and they make everything on the convenience store aspect and selling you snacks and popcorn and ice and propane and stuff like that, right? So
Yeah.
you make up these are really good points, and there's no easy destruction that ever happens or easy transition of technology. You know, you can go back to any new technological change, and the disruption of the old one is never pretty. It's usually a lot of job loss. It's usually a lot of infighting, usually a lot of union support to keep these propped up. Now, one of the things that is interesting and different, I think, with the ICE versus BEV, BEV model is that governments, for the most part, almost all are in agreement that EVs are where the future is headed. So it's almost like you can try to protect these interest groups, but at the same time, they're talking out of both sides of their mouth if they do, because they are trying to push everything to be battery electric by 2030, 2035. So depending on your jurisdiction, you know, they're essentially mandating this. So it's going to be interesting to see if there's going to be some sort of off ramp of here's all the credits that you get by the, you know, you have 5 years left to electrify everything. And do they move the goalpost of electrification? Is it no longer BEV? Is it just hybrid with a 6 kilowatt battery pack like we've seen in the RAV4? You know, these goalposts are going to move. There's going to be credit systems allowed for them to transition. Basically, what I'm saying is it's like getting your kid through high school. Teachers will do anything to let them pass as long as they show up. You know, they will give them extra credits for showing up. They'll do whatever to get them to graduate, right? At the end of the day, that's what they want. And these companies aren't going to just walk away from this. So, you know, I think there's going to be some sort of special interest that comes in and there's going to be some sort of propping up. But that's if they're even around, you know, like we saw Ford's, EV margins recently this week. And that's actually the next video that I want to show. And it's just not pretty. Like these guys are already not making a lot of money on any of this. And the future is not looking promising, even with the tech that they have. So, but it's a great point.
Yeah. I appreciate your point about the government support. I've never read anything about this, and you know, everyone thinks of Musk as being, you know, combative and all that. But when I was looking at these gigafactory placements, and I was like, okay, so they go into Shanghai. The Chinese government supports them because, amongst for other reasons, they have all of these domestic auto manufacturers that are just sucking up government money and not producing anything. So they bring in Tesla, and Tesla just embarrasses everyone, and looks like, you know, BYD will make the cut, but everyone else is sucking wind and they're going against long odds. And meanwhile, they're bringing in foreign money, right, which the PRC likes, and almost the entire supply chain is localized. So all of the money basically comes into China and stays in China. And then, okay, cool. So they do that. They build out in the U.S. and then they set up shop in the EU. And people view the Gigafactory in Berlin as competition. I was more inclined to think of it as stabilizing, right? Because the EU, Germany is the manufacturing heart of the EU, and again, if you set up a factory there, you localize the supply chain, that money is staying there, and it maintains Germany's manufacturing foothold. Because apparently everyone's plan before Musk ruined everything, was to ignore this problem, to support these legacy automakers until I guess the Chinese flooded the market. The BYD finally figured things out and flooded the market, and then they'd come up with some racist jingoids bullshit about like oh, buy American, and we had no choice, and they're not competing fair, and we just ignored everything and coasted on pickup truck sales until everyone showed how lazy we were. And I was like, no, the one problem with that argument is you have Musk and Tesla showing that no, in fact, you could have done the right thing, you just chose not to. You crushed the EV1 and never looked back. So I see Tesla is like really basically helping all these places it's setting up shop, particularly with like they're building things in the U.S. and then selling in the U.S. things. It's very basically Musk seems to have anticipated the end of globalization. Weirdly.
Yeah. It is weird because Tesla's such a multinational conglomerate, but at the same time, you're right. When they operate in these gigafactories, they very much do benefit those specific countries, which is why you have countries like India lining up and trying to get in line, but also, any country. That's why you hear rumors with Indonesia, obviously now Mexico. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so you read about Indonesia, right? They're not even talking about a raw material deal. They're talking about like a higher manufactured product, maybe battery cells, but at least refined material. So even that is allowing Indonesia to capture more of the value chain, right?
Yeah.
In addition to being more efficient, because then you're not shipping, you're cutting out at least one link in the whole shipping. That ridiculous supply chain, the globe spanning supply chain where you're shipping all these raw materials around to get refined and then made into batteries and So anyway,
you talk about, I just don't buy the argument as I sit here 2023 and talk to you about the North American EV landscape. I just don't buy that North American consumers are going to buy Chinese EVs. I just don't think it's going to happen. In the same way that American consumers don't love Huawei phones, or they don't love insert Chinese phone manufacturer that, by the way, probably have better specs than my iPhone, but I'm not buying it. And yes, my iPhone is definitely made in China, but that's different than being produced and being and the product itself being designed in China. So anyways, my point really being that I don't think Tesla's going to have to really compete with Chinese EV companies outside of China, I believe.
Yeah, but it's nice that we have so it's nice that we have the option. Like the flip side of this is the whole SpaceX Roscosmos thing. If Musk wasn't, also making a space launch company, what would be America's position right now? We would have the Boeing Starliner was just delayed for another couple months. We'd have no other way to get astronauts into space. Who would want to be arguing with Putin right now about how much it would cost to get an American astronaut into the ISS?
Yeah,
that is, and we don't have to have that conversation because of freaking SpaceX. What is it with this guy? Seriously, what? How can you get so many big questions so right? It's on. Oh my God. So ultimately don't bet against Elon, right?
Listen, I have a hard time planning my Sunday afternoon after this live stream. Okay. I don't know how Elon does what he does. You can disagree with his minute points, his micro points, and I do often with what he says in his narrative and almost the way he says stuff. But man, zoom out and let's just look at what is being accomplished. And someone's saying now AI, there's a lot here. And all we can do is just watch and just be like, wow.
And buy a couple shares. But watch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just the thing about Twitter, if they turn up any profit, if they make a quarter in Q3, they make $5. It's going to change the entire the culture of Silicon Valley. If he turns that entire thing around in a year,
interesting.
Seriously, starts profit sharing with the employees,
interesting.
All right. Well, I've appreciated the conversation. Thanks for making the time, and I like the show. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Stephen. Give everyone a shout out to Stephen for coming on and giving his thoughts here. Appreciate that. It's, a lot of good points. And Stephen left us with a really good one at the end there, talking about that'll change the culture of Silicon Valley, which is so much. It used to be MVP, minimum viable product, pivot, think fast, make a lot of rapid changes, and it seems like they've strayed away with low interest rate environments. It feels like it's been over bloated for quite some time, with tech stacks and people not actually making a lot of decisions. So that's actually a really good point that Steven leaves us with. So let's talk about and let's watch. Everyone has probably heard about this by now. Ford sees $3 billion pre-tax loss in its EV business this year. Has anyone read this report, watched the video, seen the report yet about Ford's EV business? Well, we will listen to Yahoo Finance here in a second because they love Ford EV's business, probably. So Ford is on track and expects its EV business unit to lose $3 billion this year, but remains on track to achieve a pre-tax margin of 8% by late 2026. Okay, look. We talk about the Cybertruck timeline, right? And you guys know I like to make fun of the Cybertruck timeline and, who knows when it'll be. But man, late 2026, they expect to have a measly 8% margin pre-tax, okay? Late 2026. So let's just do math here. We're in early 2023, okay? 2024, 25, 26, and let's add in half a year. So 3.5 years, 3.75 years from now. Now, let's double that because every 4 years you go out in terms of projection, let's double that. So we're talking 8 years out is what they're really anticipating for this. Folks, this is ugly, right? But Ford shares were up 1.9% midday on Thursday. Ford will begin reporting its business unit for Model E electric vehicles, Blue combustion vehicles, and Pro commercial vehicles separately. By the way, I really appreciate them doing this. All jokes aside, I think it's a really good way to show transparency to investors about all of this. And let's take a listen. Let's take a listen to what CNBC and Phil LeBeau have to say about Ford and the way that they're reporting this EV thing going forward.
Ford, which predicts it's going to lose $3 billion on electric vehicles this year, a painful part of the company's transition to EVs, but it still expects to hit.
Is audio coming okay? Let me know in the chat.
Profitability targets as a whole. Phil LeBeau spoke to the company's CFO about the company's guidance. Phil.
Well, when you look at their guidance today, I think people can take a little bit of something away from this. If you are skeptical about EVs and Ford's ability, you can say, look, they're going to lose $3 billion. They lost $2.1 billion last year. Sure, they say they're going to be profitable, but I don't buy into that. That's if you're skeptical. If you are optimistic about Ford's ability to use.
Hands up if anyone here is optimistic on Ford's battery electric ability. Why even ask?
The cash that it's generating into this transition. Look at the numbers this year. The legacy businesses, when we're talking about internal combustion engine vehicles, I mean, look at they're going to bring, that's what they called Ford Blue under the new divisions. $7 billion. Ford Pro, they kill it when it comes to commercial vehicles. That's better than last year, $6 billion. And they're expecting, as they said last year, reaffirming their guidance of making between 9.
Here's the problem here's the high level problem with all ICE manufacturers today. By 2035, in most jurisdictions, gas cars are going to be banned. New gas cars are going to be banned. Doesn't matter, right? We know this. So the terminal value of their ICE business is zero. Terminal value of most of their commercial business is zero. And that's really the end problem. And the only thing that investors really should be looking at, for if you're an investor in Ford or GM or whatever for the next 10, 15, 20 years, is how are they doing on EVs and what sort of technological advancements are they having that can really help them to enhance their margin.
And $11 billion. But it's that EV component. That's what people are focused on, guys.
Why is EV the focus? If they're projecting profits of 9.
Why is EV the focus? Oh my God. This is the problem. I don't think people realize, and I'm saying this is the fourth time I feel like on stream I've said this. Gas cars are going to be banned. Whether you like it or I might not like it, you might not like it, but it's going to happen. It's just the way it's going to be. Most jurisdictions have already put out their deadlines for these manufacturers. That's why it matters.
$9 to $11 billion.
Sure.
People are still buying gas engined machines. So why is
gas engine machines? They're still buying them. Yes, they are still buying them, but for how much longer is the question. If you're an investor and you're talking about 1 year out, okay, fine. But if you're an investor and talking decades out, different story.
EV the big shiny thing for Ford?
Well, it's not just Ford. It's all automakers. Look, it is the future. That's where we are headed. Whether you believe it 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. It is the future. And Ford believes that they can be profitable with electric vehicles. So by breaking it out into divisions, they think that there is clarity and will be clarity when they move towards profitability, which they're targeting 8% profit margins by the end of 26.
Look, by the way, I really agree with them breaking it out because what you measure moves. Any business owner will tell you, if you measure something, the metrics will get better. If you measure them properly and you continually look at them, it's bound intuitively, the way that you run your business is going to be better for that specific part of your business that you're measuring. It's just the bottom line. So I respect the move here. But let's not forget, there's a group of people out there that have been saying for a while, what are you talking about? Ford makes EVs at a profit. GM makes EVs at a profit. What are you talking about? They're not at a loss with their EV business. What are you talking about, Tesla fans? Minus 40% margins. Thank you, Mimi, for pointing that out in the chat. It's ugly, folks.
When they actually move into profitability, whether it's end of 24, beginning of 25, that remains to be seen. They haven't given that much clarity. But they believe that if they can show people, look, we are profitable in EVs, then perhaps people will give them a greater multiple. That's what they're hoping for. That's what all the legacy automakers are.
Interesting perspective. That's a good point.
If I'm wrong here, but I believe I was looking in Consumer Reports comparing a Ford F-150 conventional truck and a Ford EV F-150. The price difference is vast.
Well, it's not just that there's a difference in price. It's the cost component there.
Well, the cost of making the car.
The cost of making the car. The battery is killing them on the F-150 Lightning.
So how are they going to make that gap compress?
Sure. That gets to that gets to the heart of how are they going to be profitable in EVs. And what they say is that over the next 4 years, they will turn a negative 40% margin on their EVs into positive 8%. How? Couple of areas. One is going to be scale. As they build more of their batteries, you add that, you increase your sales to about 2 million vehicles by 2026, the end of.
Okay, drop in the chat. Yes or no? Over or under? Let's do over or under. 2 million electric vehicles for Ford end of 2026. Over or under? Who's taking the over? Who's taking the under? Throw in the chat.
2026. At the end of this year, they think they're going to be at 600,000. You do that, and then they say we're going to drive down costs with design, engineering, as well as the battery. They believe all of that gets them to profitability. But the real question for Ford, especially after the fourth quarter, is, look, you had a real cost problem in the fourth quarter. And that's in your legacy business. How can we be sure that you're going to be able to get rid of those costs, not only in the legacy business, but also as you move to EVs?
Here's what's going to happen. Here's my prediction. Almost everyone is saying way under. I don't think there's a single over here. Over if you're smoking. Okay, jokes aside, right? Here's what I really think is going to happen. Ford is breaking out their EV numbers very strategically for one reason. And that reason is there will come a day where Ford will have to retire. I'm not going to say bankrupt. They're going to have to retire their legacy business, whether someone buys them out, whether it's a bailout, whether it's the big B word. But their unit economics are not going to work out for them in the long haul. And as they don't, and they start sinking in more money into the EV business and they're net losing money, they will be able to silo out that EV business independently, rename if they have to, do whatever the hell they want, and then essentially become an EV-only business once they are forced to. It's a very proactive move if you think about this, right? Because what they're going to do is essentially rebrand them as a non-failed company and then silo out their EV business. And that's my guess. That's just my guess. But it's just hard to see what the unit economics that are happening here, and it seems like people agree with this take, that I just don't see it any other way. So by mixing all the numbers together, of course, it's hard to do that. But when you silo them out a couple of years before you're really panicking, at least you can track and measure, and that part of the business can get bowed out and maybe retire the portion of your business that you know will not be serving you any longer past government mandates. Okay, that was it. So Ford CFO on its EV business losing $2 billion in 2022.
John Lawler.
This is a good segue for us.
CFO for Ford Motor Company joining us today on a morning where you guys are reaffirming your guidance for 2023, but I think it's more what you guys are saying about the projections for the EV business the reality of where you are in terms of how much money you're losing, where you're headed. Let's start first off with the EV business. You lost 2.1 billion, I should say, last year. You're going to lose about 3 billion this year. You hear the chatter. There are people who are saying, when are you going to make money on EVs?
Right. Well, it's a startup buried within Ford Motor Company, and that's why.
Now they're a startup, but Ford and GM love to talk about how ahead they are of everyone, and Tesla haters love to say how ahead Ford and GM are, and the competition's coming. Now they're a startup, which, by the way, I do agree with more of the classification of that. But it's funny how we can talk out of both sides of our mouth in a debate here.
We like our plan here to segment the business around 3 distinct customer groups, EV being one of those, our iconic ICE vehicles, and then, of course, our commercial customers. So when you look at the path for our EVs, we are losing money now, but we're a startup, we're scaling, we're developing the products, and we will share later today a bridge that shows how we're going to bring the profitability of our EV business up to that 8% EBIT margin that we committed to by 2026.
Now getting there, there are more than a few skeptics who are saying, I don't buy it. I don't think that the cost of batteries are going to come down as much as they say they're going to come down. I don't think that they're going to be able to get the efficiencies that they're planning on.
Phil.
How do you counter that? Especially coming off of what you came off of with
Phil throwing some hardball. He's not going to like this question.
Fourth quarter, where you surprised everybody with higher costs.
Right. Well, we have an incredible team working on our 2nd and 3rd generations of EV vehicles. And these folks have built profitable EVs in the past. So they know the game plan here. It's not just about the battery costs. It's about some simple, efficient designs of the vehicle.
You know what I don't like about that answer right there? And it's very subtle, and maybe it's trivial for me to point this out, but he just said they. He said they know what they're doing. Like, it wasn't like we have recruited some of the best talent, and we're going to figure this out, and we have experience on our team. It was like, we've hired some people, and they know what they're doing. They've done it before. It really feels like a extended out division of their business, and it's kind of like something we have to do. Maybe it's just me. It's trivial for me to point that out, but it's a distinction that I do listen to.
We are obsessed with taking the energy efficiency of the vehicle up, which allows us to put a smaller battery in the vehicle, lowers our costs, and allows us on that path towards 8%.
Coming off the fourth quarter, let's be honest, it was a mess. You surprised a lot of people by saying, look, we left, a couple $1 billion out there that we shouldn't have left out there. And it raises the question, look, manufacturing is what you should be known for.
Ooh.
And yet you're still talking about complexities. You're still talking about...
Look at that EV market share graphic, hey? 64.7% Tesla, 7.6% Ford, at a minus 40% margin, mind you. Hyundai at 7.1% market share. Who knows what their margins are. And then Volkswagen,
about
5%.
We've got costs in here that we're having trouble wringing.
Where's Rivian and Lucid, folks? Come on. Let's throw them on. 0.01.
Out of the organization. Shouldn't that be...
And GM. Yeah, good point. Sorry, I forgot about GM.
A strength of Ford, not a weakness?
Well, what's really happening for us is our push into the new businesses, EVs, that's going really well. We're on track. We're pleased with that. We do have issues in our industrial platform. We're working through those. We're focused on quality. We're focused on our cost, and we're driving that out. We know what the game plan is to fix those issues. We're on it. It's the #1 priority for our leadership team. And what you will see as we go through this year and as we go over the next couple of years, you'll start to see that come through. And it's the segmentation of the business into those 3 segments where you really start to see that clearly come through. And it will unfold differently in each. And that's important because our blue business, where we have our iconic ICE vehicles, you'll see costs coming down, and we'll invest in our growth businesses of the Pro business for commercial and in EVs. But one point there.
Look at him in the back. He's just reading Twitter. He has zero concern about what he's talking about. Just look, he's just like texting. He's like, I don't care what this guy says, man. The level of disrespect.
The Pro costs coming down, and
the
we'll
level
invest
of disrespect.
in our growth businesses of the Pro business for commercial and in EVs. But one point there, Phil, is that ICE business for the next couple of years in Ford Blue, that's a growth business too.
It's a growth business if you can control your costs. I have to push back here on one thing. Covering you guys as long as I've covered you guys, it seems like every once in a while, 3 or 4 years, this issue comes up where there are problems getting the costs out. We are just not as efficient as we should be. Why is that? with Ford? What is there in the DNA of this company that makes it so hard for you guys to get the level of efficiency that you should be getting?
Yeah. Well, I'd say that as a management team, we're moving past awareness to acceptance and now accountability with our 3 segments.
I gotta listen to that again. That was great.
We're moving past awareness.
We're moving past awareness
to acceptance.
To accepting it that we suck at manufacturing.
And now accountability.
And now we're being accountable to it. Okay, fair enough.
With our 3 segments, there's clear accountability. Each leader of that business needs to deliver. I think what happens is
that was such a, by the way, one of those like corporate lines that PR just gives you. Like, by the way, you're gonna be grilled on this. Awareness, acceptance, accountability. All right, John, you got this. Awareness, acceptance, accountability.
That when there's a company that knows that they have an issue and that doesn't change, there's a group within that company that benefits from that. And we're starting to get to that root cause and we're changing that.
Okay. Well, look, I think it's quite interesting, this whole thing, this entire debacle, if you want to call it. But this should not hit any of us like unexpectedly. Like, this is quite obvious that we've been seeing this slow motion train wreck. GM is on a different boat, by the way. Like, GM is on an entirely different planet. Like, if Ford is Jupiter, GM is like Pluto, but they're still trying to convince everyone they're a planet. Like, that's where we are in terms of the EV landscape still. GM is still trying to figure out the name of its 31st model of EV that they're still yet to plan to come out. Like, that's where GM is focusing on. They're split testing corporate headlines for their 31st, 32nd, 33rd model that's yet to come out in 2032. That's where GM is. At least Ford is facing the facts and saying, look, we suck. We know we suck. We know that that our EV business is where everything's going. Let's separate it out. And guess what? That might actually future-proof us, So it's just an interesting time of what's happening, and Yahoo Finance talking about it as well, but I think we've belabored the point enough to not worry about it again. But this Ford news is both good and bad. It's good because obviously it gives us transparency and accountability into their numbers, and that's always nice. But it's also ugly because a lot of people have been arguing for quite some time online that Ford is actually ahead of Tesla in its EV business. Their margins are okay, and that they're going to scale way faster than Tesla will. And it's a sad day for those people. Pluto is not a planet. All right. Well, much love, folks. Thank you for joining me on another Sunday morning Pacific time live stream. I hope we've set up everyone for a good week ahead. We've covered some stuff from last week. We had some fun over the weekend. Get ready for the week ahead. It will be crazy. There will be banking headlines. There will be a lot of stuff that's happening. But remember, and I tweeted this out, and maybe I'll leave us on this. And it's kind of a preachy tweet, but if I'm not going to preach on my own channel, I don't know where I will. But I tweeted this out. I said, while it may seem like the financial world is ending and all hell is breaking loose, just remember that long term there is little that the entrepreneurial spirit cannot heal. Cycles come and go, but technological advancement has true staying power. And I really believe this. At the end of the day, innovation, good people, good companies will survive, will thrive. At the end of the day, that's really what matters. It sounds preachy, but it just seems like there's such a negative headline. It's a negative headline galore at the moment. And I try to stay away from that stuff. And of course, you have to face realities when they hit you. But it is what it is. So try to stay positive. Try to stay well. Don't try to be too doom and gloom during these times, which I know is a little bit hard. But stay positive, stay happy, stay healthy. Do whatever you need to prioritize yourself. Thank you again for joining me on a Sunday live stream. Thank you for all the comments. I see everyone here. And if you want to join us, if you want to support the channel, feel free to become a Patreon member, patreon.com/hitthatbid. And please do connect your Patreon account, YouTube account to Discord if you are a member over $5 a month or more, as that brings you into our Discord. And we can continue the conversation throughout the week on there and or on Twitter. All right, guys, much love. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And if you want to get this hat, TSLAjuju.com, and I'll ship you one there. Remember, use coupon code JUJU for 10% off. All right, guys, much love. Yash signing off. Take care. Be happy. Be healthy. God bless. Take care. Peace.